Now, coming on to US market, of course, the macro conditions, they look little favorable if you talk about, the oil has cooled off. Resilient economy in US, that what led to a winning session on Wall Street yesterday. All three major indices for, in fact, blue chip Dow, that broke a 5-day losing streak. Tech-heavy Nasdaq, that notched its 8th positive session of the last 9. And so it was a good day for all the three indices. And if you look at the economic front also, Shreyansi, a lot of economic data that has to come in now in this week, especially, the jobs opening data, labor turnover data, that is all due in the morning today. So we will react on it tomorrow for Indian markets. The first of several reports that is coming in this week, and of course this will provide insights to the strength of the, how the job markets are doing. If you talk about the individual stocks, the kind of move we saw on Ford Motors, that slid 6%. This was after they reported numbers and the guidance they gave, because the company gave guidance on the lower end of the range, what they previously guided, and hence the traders sharply reacted to it. Of course, the oil prices, the way it has cooled off, that has actually triggered a fresh positive sentiment globally in the markets. Now, traders will eye earnings report from major companies due on Tuesday today. This is a earning heavy week from mega caps stocks, especially the Magnificent Seven, and we have several other companies like Pfizer, McDonald. They will post numbers today before the bell, and of course followed by Alphabet.
Well, absolutely, Priyanka, and a very happy Dhanteras to you as well. But after that, let's also take a look at what the crude market really did, because when you take a look at US crude oil, that sold off more than 6% for its worst day in more than 2 years after Iranian energy facilities were not damaged during Israeli strikes over the weekend as well. US WTI, when you take a look at it, dropped just over 6% actually to close around those $67 per barrel levels for its biggest daily loss since July 12, 2022 as well, and the benchmark had shed 7.9%. So those are the kind of moves that you're staring at, and futures for global crude benchmark Brent as well slid 6% to settle around that $71 per barrel mark. Now, Israel, of course, on Saturday attacked Iran's military installations in 3 provinces in response to Tehran launching ballistic missiles against Israel on October 1st. That is something that was an important update coming in as far as the oil market is concerned. And for weeks, of course, the market had braced itself for an Israeli retaliation following that direct Iranian offensive against the Jewish state earlier this month as well. Broader Middle East tensions are also simmering, and that is something that has continued to rise after the attack on Israel by Iran-backed Hamas on October 7th of last year. In oil markets, key consideration, of course, had been a direct engagement between both the parties, with concerns of an attack on Iranian oil facilities rising in recent weeks as well. That's something that we're looking at, and Iran, of course, accounts for up to 4% of global supplies, and that's the word coming in from the US EIA. So that's the kind of backdrop that you have coming in for oil as well. When you take a look at what else is happening for the oil markets are also staring at a global oversupply. So that largely is the kind of backdrop that we're looking at least as far as oil is concerned. And that largely is the kind of handover that we have. As far as oil is concerned, when you take a look at gold, though, you're looking at a slight easing coming for gold prices, because treasury yields are the ones that are rising at this point, and there's a host of US data that Priyanka talked about that is in focus as well that we're keeping an eye on. But that said, Priyanka, what else are we watching out for in terms of global cues?
Absolutely, Shreyansi, on front of economic data, jobs opening data, if you remember, that actually is a sign of resilience in the US market, and this data has to be closely watched out for. Other than that, consumer confidence data that has to come in from US. Now, talking about other cues, Japan, therein unemployment data has to come in. Other than that, of course, it's an earnings heavy week, so focus would be on the earnings. Alphabet, HSBC, Santander, Pfizer, Visa, Novartis, AMD. These all companies have to report numbers in US. And back home in India, you talk about Nifty. We have 3 of the Nifty companies which has to report number: Cipla, Maruti Suzuki, Adani Ports. Rather, Adani Enterprise. 4 of the Nifty earnings that has to report numbers. Now, other than that, if you look at the corporate action, there are a couple of stocks which will be watched out for. They are eligible for dividend. Gabriel India as well as Nasdaq. These 2 stocks could be in action on the news flow. And of course, PM is unveiling a healthcare project in Chhattisgarh, that will also be closely watched out for.
Well, absolutely, and not just stocks back home, because we do have lots of stock-specific action this morning. Let's kickstart the show by looking at that. Then Ford Motor has guided to the lower end of its previously announced 2024 earnings forecast as it slightly topped Street's third quarter expectations. Then the Detroit automaker also said that it now expects adjusted earnings before interest and taxes, or EBIT, of about $10 billion. Now, it had previously guided to between $10 billion to $12 billion as well. Remember, Street had already been fretting over the fact that Ford would have to lower guidance on account of softening demand as well as rising inventory. So that is something that we're looking at coming in terms of the worries really coming to fruition at this point. Shares of the automaker were roughly down by 5% during after-hours trading. So that's the kind of action that we saw, at least as far as Ford Motor is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. And that's visible, that the slowdown in auto space is not just an Indian sphere, but now what the kind of guidance Ford is giving. Of course, this gives us a caution sign. But then let's keep it with auto space only. What seems to be a deeper than expected overhaul. Volkswagen plans to shut at least 3 of the factories in Germany, lay off tens of thousands of staff, and even shrink its remaining plants in Europe's biggest economy. The car maker has been negotiating for weeks with unions over its plans to overhaul its business and lower the cost, including considering plant closure in Germany for the first time.
Alright, then moving on, shifting focus to the money markets then, where yen has now languished to a 3-month low as the loss of a parliamentary majority for Japan's ruling coalition in weekend elections raised uncertainty about the nation's political as well as monetary outlook. The currency weakened as much as 0.8% against the dollar as well, with the slide coming after 4 straight weekly declines.